I am Lyle from the Outer Red Hands.
I'm Jeremy from the Outer Red Hands.
And joining us is our special guest, Jackson.
Hello.
Who is our resident Starfinder booster.
That's me.
Right.
I thought you were getting commission from Paizo. The way you've
I've been
promoting
waiting for it.
Promoting Starfinder. So Starfinder came out for Gen Con.
Mm-hmm.
So
End of August?
just recently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it has taken the gaming world by storm. So we thought we would do a little review of Starfinder, and we thought we'd bring in the expert to walk us through it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. But he's promised to give us a critical, honest review of Starfinder.
I'm not going to be gushing too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, this is Starfinder. It's pretty cool. So basically, for anyone that's not familiar with it, it's a science fantasy or space opera setting of Pathfinder, or the future of Pathfinder. I think roughly around 10,000 years in the future from the Golarian setting of Paizo's Pathfinder. Mm-hmm. Also, of course, made by Paizo.
So people who are not familiar with Pathfinder, then Golarian is the world in which Pathfinder is set.
Yes, that's the official setting. Of course, there's always people that have their homebrew settings, like any D&D type thing. But yeah, this is a sci-fi take on that does... it's in the same solar system and universe, but chronologically in the future.
And in the premise is 300 years prior to when this game is set, Golarian disappeared.
Yes, yeah. Well, their whole thing was that there's a thing called the Gap, which is like...
a store, that sells clothes.
Right.
Gene's original. Sorry.
Yeah, they've got space outlets everywhere. No, so it's like everybody in the universe, the known universe, had some kind of collective memory loss where like they couldn't remember not only their history or who and why they were. They did retain their individual relationships. I think the example they gave in the book is that entire planets were at war, but they couldn't remember why. And it just sort of like plunged the whole solar system into chaos, then leading them to unify and sort of start this, what they call the Pact Worlds, which is kind of like your Republic or something like that, or your, whatever.
Federation.
Federation, of course, yeah. So, one of the biggest mysteries is that in the place of Golarian, the setting of Pathfinder is Absalom Station, which has, like, for anyone that's not familiar, one of the key, main relics of Pathfinder, the Starstone, which was, that's the whole lore of Pathfinder. That's in Absalom Station. And Absalom Station has taken the role of Golarian as the center of the solar system. So there's a lot more that they added on to their little solar system here, but a lot. Basically, you've got a whole new array of races on the various different planets, which are playable, along with the original Pathfinder races, and a complete new array of classes, along with some pretty handy rule updates, I'd say. I personally think that they're all pretty large improvements.
Right. So the theme is pretty new, right? Like things like that.
Yeah.
With the character creation.
Yeah, and I think that sort of takes a page from D&D 5th edition.
Like
where,
the backgrounds?
Yeah, kind of like the backgrounds, where you don't just have race and class, you also have theme now, which is your motivation, is your background, and will decide certain things about your character, as well as also giving you boosts and bonuses to your various, as you're leveling up, you're going to get some ability score boosts and whatnot.
So what's an example race, an example class, and an example theme if you're putting it together?
Okay, just to jump in, example race, Kasatha. They're these four-armed guys that have giant heads and masks over their mouths, always. And they are in the original Pathfinder setting when your characters get high level enough to actually leave Golarian and go to other planets. They're there. They're actually not really invaders, but they're coming from another solar system on a world ship, which I think is really cool. You know, it's they call it the Idari. I don't know if I can show this here.
We'll post it up.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So imagine that's being shown right now.
Right. So the Idari is a world ship, I believe the size of an entire planet with multiple cities. So these guys,
Yeah, it looks like it.
These guys are cool in terms of mechanics because you can wield twice as what you would be able to as a normal 2-armed person. You've got 4 arms to work with. For class, I'm gonna go with my favorite class, the Solarians. They're basically analogous to Jedi, but instead of being just straight Force-using Jedi, they use the power of either the suns or stars, and conversely, black holes.
So really doubling down on the light and dark side.
Yeah, although I'm not sure.
You know, it'd be more light than light. The sun is right.
Yeah. I think
what's darker than dark? A black hole.
Black hole.
They go with photon and graviton, but yeah,
Sure.
I don't know if they're actually. I'm pretty sure they're not directly related to your alignment, but they can be if you wanted to make it that way as a game master.
Kind of go in the direction of the palette in the 5e.
Yeah, exactly. So what they get is this whole concept of a solar manifestation, and that can either be a weapon or armor, which is pure light or pure darkness. So essentially, you've got a lightsaber, except instead of being a lightsaber, it's pure energy.
Right.
And they have like a mote of energy that just follows them all the time, and then when they enter combat, they just get this sword, or one person that played in my trial game used a solar whip. I thought that was cool. Or conversely, armor, and that can be either pure black hole darkness, gravity darkness, or photon light.
Doesn't that just suck all the energy, all the damage to you?
I mean,
the guy, shoot over there.
If that's how you want to homebrew it.
So what's an example class?
that is a class.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, theme. Okay, so theme. Here's a good one: bounty hunter. Everyone loves a good Boba Fett. Everyone loves a good bounty hunter. So, bounty hunter could be your theme. So, if you were a Solarian and a bounty hunter, that means that presumably you're hunting someone for money. Some other themes that off the top of my head: ace pilot, spacefarer, which is kind of like your typical adventurer, xenoseeker. They're pretty cool. They're like, you have to find new life on other planets. That's your whole goal. Icon, you're a famous person. I think the example they gave in one of the first chapters is a human Solarian that's also an icon. So they have to, they're famous in the known solar system. So there's definitely a lot you can do with those themes, and there is also the option to be themeless, which means that it doesn't fit your character specifically, any of them. I believe there's 9 themes and then themeless, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So I like if I were to roll a character right now, it would probably be a Kasatha, Solarian, Spacefarer.
Okay.
If I was to just like throw a character concept out there. But what I like about this game, what I think is a definite improvement over Pathfinder, is that your classes do not limit you at all. In Pathfinder, I would often find myself thinking, when I rolled a character for a long-term campaign, what prestige class am I going to pick? What multi-class? How am I going to... that's...
Thinking about your build.
Yeah, exactly. It's very specific.
Yeah.
In this game, you can really go for many different builds with many different classes. For example, I'd say especially with Operative, Soldier, and Mystic, which are essentially analogous to Rogue, Fighter, and Cleric, you are not pigeonholed at all. A soldier can easily be augmenting their armor and weapons with magic if they follow the Arcane Assailant path, and also have a theme that totally fits that. For example, Priest.
Right.
And then have a sort of Warhammer 40k going. But, just as easily, a Mystic can be doing some sort of outlaw twist to your mystic and have them be like some kind of cult leader or something like that. There really isn't like strict limitations. And what I liked is that actually for each class they include 4 different suggested builds. So that build is based off of your theme and the different paths you choose as a class. Yeah. And that is one of like many definite like mechanic improvements from Pathfinder.
Yeah. Now it's kept skills and feats.
Yes.
Which is Pathfinder, but also like D&D 3rd edition and 3.5.
Yeah.
So that's carried over. It obviously the D20 system is carried over, but there's some differences from Pathfinder and Starfinder in the rules.
Yes. For example, stamina points and resolve points.
Okay.
That's a huge difference. Where in this game, when you take damage before it hits your hit points, you're gonna soak it up with stamina points.
Right.
And you can think of that as, say, like in Halo or something like that, how you got your shields before you start taking damage. It's kind of, I think of it as something like that. Whether it's actually literally like that or you're just your ability to take a hit, you're gonna take your stamina points are gonna soak things up before you actually take damage. Then you've
I also read that there's a change in armor class. So now there's 2 types of armor class.
Yes,
right?
correct. There's kinetic armor class and energy armor class.
Right.
And it makes sense because there's people running around with plasma guns and like energy swords, but also they still have your classic fantasy, because this is still space fantasy or space opera. You've got, your typical swords, your weapons, those are still all there. They're kind of like updated to look more futuristic, but they're still there. And kinetic damage is definitely like a real thing that you have to contend with, but energy damage is way more prominent. And I did notice that they said if they didn't denote which one is which in specific armor, then that means it's the same. So some armors do have the same for kinetic and energy.
But some are better in one area than the other.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah. The resolve points and the stamina, not so much the resolve, but the stamina points and the way it combos with hit points reminded me of like World of Darkness style, where they do have that. You kind of go through the one line, and when that's depleted, then you get into the real damage.
There's also resolve points can be used as a sort of like mana pool, where different classes have features that involve using resolve points. And you can take 10 minutes rest and regenerate your stamina points by spending 1 resolve point.
So your resolve points, is that built from your wisdom or something? Or
actually, it's your main ability stat. It's your main stat.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's say you're a Solarian, your main stat is Charisma. So it would be, I believe, your Charisma score plus half of your level.
Okay.
Which the minimum is 1. And then it changes. I'm pretty sure Soldier is Strength, so for Soldier it would be your Strength plus half your level. So say you're level 6, it would be 3, and say your Strength is a plus 3, so then you've got 6 resolve points.
Okay.
And also another thing, stamina points and hit points are based on your class as well, where you're not rolling a hit die anymore. It's just you get a fixed number. Say mechanics have 6 hit points they get every single level, and your first level you also get racial hit points. So there's a lot of stuff where they cut out like unnecessary rolling, and they're just like, this is your number,
this is what you want. You wanted the 6, you're gonna get it every level.
Yeah, exactly.
You read my mind.
Yeah.
So
I think they definitely responded to the sort of frustrations with the 3.5 system with this game in a pretty positive way, in my opinion.
I wonder if they're going to bring this and come up with a Pathfinder 2nd edition. That'll be more in keeping with Starfinder.
I was thinking about that, because they're definitely still running with Pathfinder. I know they're still making adventure paths. I know they're still.
But it's been out for
content.
several years.
Right, without an update, yeah.
But I mean, that's not.
Well,
that's a bit of a tangent from Starfinder.
Right.
But
yeah. I do believe they have updated things, and I think that they also include like conversion tables if you were trying to do Starfinder Pathfinder or Pathfinder Starfinder.
Yeah.
I know that's possible.
Right. Now, this includes starships
Yes.
and the Starship Combat, which can be kind of frustrating in a science fiction core book where they don't actually include that. And there's been a few that's come out, but this actually has the real deal.
Yeah, they have a whole chapter dedicated to starships, and especially at the end, Starship Combat, which I think is probably.
And I've heard it
coolest
described
feature.
as like Starship Combat for a role-playing game. And in particular, they get around the problem where you have your party sitting in a spaceship and everybody's got to be able to do something.
Yes.
Nobody wants to stand there and go, so what's happening now?
Right.
Yeah.
Please explain to the audience for me.
Yeah, what they did for that is they made it so everyone has a role.
Yeah.
So I believe the roles are pilot, captain, turret gunner, science expert, and engineer. And they basically play out as you'd imagine.
Yeah.
The captain is buffing the party and allowing everyone else to do extra movements in their round by sort of using their charisma. The pilot is doing maneuvers, and they have a whole maneuver system which is pretty in-depth in terms of the rules. They have like a flying...
Yeah, facing matters. Like, yeah.
They have what is it? Aft, and if they use like naval terminology, there's 4 arcs in
Port,
the
starboard,
field.
yeah.
Port, starboard, and
Stern. Aft.
it's
There you go.
yeah. Oh,
I
you
think
got
that's
it.
right, yeah.
He knows. So they divided their hex map because the starfield is hex based into 4 arcs, and that you can turn the ship, and also the turrets can turn those ways and whatnot.
They're not out yet, but I think they're coming out with models.
Yeah, I think Ninja
spaceship
Theory.
models.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Ninja Theory is doing them. Yeah, actual.
Yeah, I mean,
3D models.
why would they lose out on the money for that? I mean,
Yeah,
that would
absolutely.
be-
Well, they came out with this flip mat, and you're looking at it going, that looks like a graph, a black graph.
Right.
But yeah, people buying the star mat that you can flip. I don't know what's on the other side. More black.
Unfortunately, I couldn't manage to snag that while I was in the States, but
Yeah.
Amazon.
Oh.
So
Yeah, so you're saying the release was a little irregular, like they didn't quite get things out that you were expecting when the core book came out?
All I knew is that the release date was, I believe, August 17th. I wasn't at Gen Con. I know they had everything at Gen Con. And what I was told, actually directly by Paizo in a Facebook comment section, was your local game stores should have everything. It took me a few local game stores just to find the core rulebook and the basic terrain flip mat and the codex.
Because they had sold out or they weren't carrying it?
I believe they weren't carrying it yet,
Okay.
as far as I know. But I know there's some leeway when it comes to local stores. I checked Amazon too, and they seem to have something saying September 5th, which was, some weeks after. but-
That's what it's saying now, September 5th.
Yeah.
But people are already leaving reviews talking about books that they've received from Amazon. So I guess there was a couple waves.
So that's my confusion. That's really where my confusion was. It did seem
Okay.
like a sort of sloppy release. But the other criticism I have for the release is just the core rulebook. The core rulebook pawns, which to me are a big deal because I really like the visual representation on the board.
Okay.
They didn't have many enemies. They had like maybe 2 or 3 enemies.
But in science fiction, how do you tell the enemies from the... Are there in this setting, is there like an enemy race? There are undead.
Yeah,
And
there's
then there's
definitely
the
monsters.
bad undead.
Right.
There's the undead and the undead that are so evil that the other undead are like, well, come on.
Yeah.
We're just
And
here
then
to
there's
destroy all
theories-
living, but not enjoy it.
Right.
I don't know. It seems to take too much delight. I don't know.
They hinted that like some people in the characters in the universe think there's like an under the table agreement there since they used to be part of the same group. I think basically there's a planet called Eox where it used to be a human-like, highly advanced planet where they had magic and technology, and they were really far ahead. But they were at war with another 2 planets that they ultimately managed to destroy, which created what's called the diaspora, an asteroid belt. So that created the diaspora, but what happened to Aox is that the weapon they used destroyed the internal core of their planet, meaning that their only choice for survival was to use necromancy to make the whole planet undead.
Oh.
And those wizards or technomancers, in this game technomancers are basically wizards, became the first bone sages, leaders of this entire undead planet.
Sounds like Necrons.
Yeah, very Necron.
It's very
yeah,
Necron. I mean, they really took a lot of eclectic influence from the science fantasy space.
Yeah, it's one of those games where you go, that sounds like...
Yeah, right. Yeah. And to give you the ability to play kind of your favorite type of character. Yeah,
well, which is true. I mean, people go, well, but, I want to play science fiction, but I want a Jedi, but not Star Wars. Well, you got that.
Yeah.
And I want Necrons.
That's kind of what I like, because you can be like, I want to be a Jedi fighting Warhammer 40k enemies in Dead Space, and that's
with the Federation from Star Trek. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we got you covered.
Yeah,
I think you're going to be happy.
We got you, yeah.
And I want to be Gandalf.
Right.
Got you covered.
Yeah, you can. It's just that they still maintain that fantasy element, which I think is pretty cool. Like, there's this... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Well, I was just going to mention there's this one-page picture of this dwarf in full body armor with like an energy shield fighting a Vesk, the giant lizard people.
Yeah.
And it's just like Pathfinder meet Starfinder,
right.
Starfinder meet Pathfinder,
and
fight, bam, yeah. And that's a whole other thing where there was a giant war between, and I could go on, but there was a giant war between the Vesk, the giant lizard people, invading the Pact Worlds, until the Swarm, which was in Pathfinder, this otherworldly space hive mind that the Sharon, another playable race, broke off from and warned them about. They have to team up to fight those.
Okay, so we got Undead, we got Swarm. They're really covering all their bases on classic bad
Cult
guys.
of the Devourer was another thing I read in there.
Are there time-traveling cyborgs that come and... Terminator reference.
I definitely think that's on the way, or if you're DMing.
Is there an evil corporation that's mining unobtainium? That's destroying the peaceful native planets?
Yes.
No, it's good. Actually, about the fantasy element, there's something about magic. Magic's been capped a bit. So in Pathfinder, magic goes up to level 9.
Yeah.
But in Starfinder, it goes up to level 6.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, how do you feel about that? I mean, does it still feel like if I wanted to play a magic character, I still have enough to work with?
I think so. I think so because the technology combined with the magic is what makes it so much... Like, I think less is almost more in a way. Like, I was reading the Technomancer spells, and one thing they can do is they can create junk bots, which means if there's random debris lying around, you can just create a robot out of it using magic that can heal or fight. As I think, and as you get level up, you can specialize too. Yeah. That's the thing. See, that's what I really like about this game is that every class can do pretty much everything. Where, like, for example, mechanics.
Yeah.
You have two options as a mechanic. You can either pick a drone companion or an exocortex armor. If you do choose the drones, you have the choice between eventually a battle drone, a healing drone, or a stealth drone. So it's like just right there, you've got 4 entire like classes basically, right wrapped into mechanic. And that you see that pattern over and over again.
Oh, that's cool.
Technomancer has the ability to, one of the specs in there was Battle Mage, where they've got a lot of like arsenal-based stuff where you can literally just generate any weapon, even if you don't have proficiency with it, and just use it. And they've got, there's one picture of like that spec using that weapon. I love that picture because this Technomancer's in full battle armor with a giant gun, and it's like, oh, that's a wizard? Okay. Same thing with the soldier. You can do Arcane Assailant where you're augmenting all your armor and weapons with magic. So I really don't feel like you're restricted in that sense.
So you don't feel like the soldier gets outclassed after a few levels? Because that's always the complaint when we were looking at Dungeons & Dragons or even Pathfinder, is that the fighter eventually becomes outclassed.
Exactly. You don't need to multi-class. You just don't. It's they even said in the book, they're like, you can, but that'll actually be worse off because then you'll just be like a little bit of everything when you could have just been a lot of everything. Really, you really could have. And I think that is what really like captivates me because I used to be such a prestige class guy and now I'm like, well, I don't need that. I mean, I could just do anything I want with literally any character. I could be a Solarian with a crazy energy sword, or I can be a Solarian with like pure darkness armor. I really do feel like tanking, healing, and DPS, those old paradigms, are sort of just, it by class breaks down where you don't need to worry about that. You really don't.
An interesting thing that I heard was so they're introducing some new alien races in this book, and you can also use the old fantasy races, dwarves and elves. But there's an alien anthology or an alien codex coming out that's basically the monster manual, but that's also going to contain basically playable alien races. So it's going to expand the number of aliens you can actually play so that no one is going to be, you can play several campaigns and never have played the same race or the same origin twice. So it's really going to expand things in an interesting way. And I think science fiction can handle that very well too, because it can be infinite.
I mean, that I
There's
think
a new planet.
Yes. Right.
I think that is the ultimate draw of this game, especially if you like a sci-fi setting, because it is unlimited. You really can do whatever. For example, in my old campaigns doing Pathfinder, I was always so torn between whether to do Galarian setting, their Paizo setting, or do my own homebrew. And it really is one or the other, and both have drawbacks and advantages. In this, they really were smart about it because they've got one solar system that is civilized. So you've got the one Packed World solar system, and that is colonized from the sun all the way to Octurne, which is an old god's egg, like an unborn, like old god, an unborn Cthulhu type god, basically, which I think is the coolest and obviously like set the campaign here type thing. But that said, you have an entire galaxy that's unexplored. It's not like Star Wars where it's like they've basically spread out through the whole galaxy. They've got one solar system, and then there's one or two confirmed other solar systems. Other than that, let's say you're doing whatever on Versus and Acton and Eox, and then you go to an unknown world because they have drift travel, which is like your hyperspace travel.
Which in this setting they've just discovered, not just, but is a fairly new development.
Yeah, and one of the theories is that had something to do with the memory gap in the lore.
Okay.
That when they discovered it, they might have accidentally created like a time paradox where like the dimension got folded over itself, creating this time memory gap.
Okay.
But anyway, so let's say you're on Triaxis, you're on Aox, and then the adventure leads you to your homebrew, which is in another solar system, unknown, unexplored, in another part of the galaxy. So you head there, and now you have unlimited capability and potential to do whatever you want as the dungeon master or GM. Tell any story you want, and when that's done, let's head back to Absalom Station, and then you're back in the solar system. So you have ultimate freedom to use what they give you and to do whatever you want.
I'm surprised why not have it all is not the tagline.
Yeah.
It's shoot for the stars. It should be just, hey, you can do whatever. Everything.
Well, I mean, they were really, like, pushing that, like, it's space. Look, D&D in space.
Right.
But to me, that was what I really, like, latched on, was like, oh, okay, you can just do whatever. You can make your own aliens. You can come up with your own stats.
Oh, right. Yeah, so that, in the Alien book, they're going to kind of give you kind of a template or a guideline to creating original races.
Yeah. They even have one spec for mystics, where if you're a mystic and you pick the Xenoseeker theme, one of the pre-builds they give you is Xenodruid, where your whole life is dedicated basically to protecting life on new planets.
Okay.
New forms of life. Which is just so cool to me how they were able to bridge basically everything they had from the medieval setting in a way that fits into a sci-fi setting.
Right.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So I mean, just with Paizo's support of Pathfinder, years and years of source material and things, and so
Is
now-
already on
that
Amazon.
already, right? That already exists.
all in queued up.
And there's going to be years of support for Starfinder. So much source material. Even if you don't come up with anything original, you're going to constantly be, having new places to explore and new things that are fleshed out.
And I will say, so one thing that could be taken as a criticism or as a positive, this gap thing. So I think it's very clear. I think they made it very clear that the concept of this universal memory gap was basically so they could keep Pathfinder going without messing it up and have Starfinder going.
Right.
And you could see that, because I do definitely think they only did that as a way to protect their material, to protect their game. But that said, if you look at it from a different angle, you could see it like this. Not only are they protecting the future of Pathfinder, but they're also allowing you to explore the past of Starfinder, where now, as the GM or DM, you have the option to put in any ancient lore and say, well, that is what happened. And even if it turns out to be not what happened, if they eventually come out with this adventure path or that adventure path, they even work that in because they say, well, all of the accounts from the past during the gap are conflicting, if there are accounts at all. So I think their whole goal here, from what I could tell, was to give you that sort of freedom as the storyteller.
Yeah, I wonder how often people do that. They play the history of the setting.
Interesting.
Like a game that we like, Mutant Chronicles, actually encourages you to do that and explains, here's the timeline and here's how you can jump on at different points.
Right.
But most games, it's like, here's where you start and here's what the past was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you're not really encouraged necessarily to play that. You've got your jump on point. So certainly you could. There's nothing really to stop you. But just curious.
Oh.
Now I went onto Amazon and it had 3.5 stars, which I was shocked because people who buy a game straight away, it's just been out, are generally the super fans, and they and give it 5 stars. And when I looked at it, all the 1 star, 2 star, 3 star ratings were talking about the binding. They weren't actually talking about the system. They would actually say, "Oh, I like the game. It's really cool. The binding sucks." How did you find yours? Still seems to be intact. Oh, sorry. But I guess the binding is pretty good on this one. Of course, it's a big, thick book.
Yeah,
but
it's a very
you've had
big
no
book.
problems with it.
I have not. I did notice that it said made in China when I bought it, which, is, I understand, standard in terms of most manufacturing these days.
Yeah.
I do kind of feel like for and again, Paizo is not a huge company, even for all they've built. They're kind of still very close to their fan base and all
kind of
that.
surprising. This is only their second RPG.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I understand that it's cheaper to manufacture in China. For me, I think the biggest bummer was the core rulebook pawns having like 2 obvious monsters. It's not even about enemies. It's because you can
like
turn
the actual
any-
monsters, like the big thing.
Yeah.
Are there monsters in here?
There were in the book itself.
Yeah. In this book, are there monsters like like a giant spider creature, like a crystal spider?
Not really.
So
They put some like villain factions, but as terms of monsters, and I know this is like their MO, they're gonna put out another book for that.
Yeah, right.
And
right.
again,
This is surprising. They have cosmology. They have gods. You don't often see that in a science fiction game, or even in a science fantasy game. Like Star Wars has the Force,
Right.
and
but it's not like there's the god of the Force or anything. They don't even reference
Yeah.
any gods, I think, in Star Wars.
They have a Force-like system,
Right.
to be sure, in that Solarians use the cycle, which is they're connected to the cycle of stars being born, turning into black holes, and then turning into stars again. And then mystics also have their connection powers, which can be either to a god or to a philosophy. But I think the role of deities has definitely changed in Starfinder, where it's less of like, this is this church that we, it's more like deities are like super powerful aliens.
Didn't an AI become a deity?
No.
Yeah.
Yes, the Triune was, the Triune was one of the AI gods from Pathfinder, like an android god, a super advanced supercomputer, and I think one other AI type god. It was 3 different separate gods. One of them or 2 of them was new that merged into one like ultra AI consciousness.
Cool.
And like think of it like this: if you're a technomancer, worshiping the Triune isn't like, I've got to pray every morning and hope. It's like the Triune is what allows me to hack reality, like that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where the gods have powers, they're players, they're beings.
Right.
And it's a very like Warhammer 40k type way of looking at it, where some of the gods seem to be more just like cultural, like the Kasatha have Talavat the storyteller and the Shirin have Hylax, where it seems more like just part of their cultural identity that they sort of just do this.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Are you happy with this release, or
You're not very good at reading people, eh?
Sorry.
Yeah, this is a poker.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm happy with it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I'm like drooling over it.
Yeah, that's great.
But if I was to give any criticisms at all, the things I could think of are the rules seem a little bit heavy-handed, especially if you're casual.
Yeah.
I was flipping through, they have this whole section on vehicle chases, which is cool, really cool, but also it's got this whole multi-turn system where you've got your driving turn, you're driving round and then you're fighting round. But ultimately, I think it's a really strong start, and there's a lot of flavor in there, a whole lot of flavor that I couldn't even begin to get into, that really just makes this whole setting like come to life, I think, in a big way, in a really cool way.
Nice.
So, I'm biased because I'm a fanboy, but I would definitely give it somewhere between 4 to 4.5 out of 5.
10. No, I'm just kidding. All right, out of 5.
Okay. Nice.
All right, so that's an overview of Starfinder. We hope you found it helpful. And I guess it's a big thumbs up from Jackson, and after Jeremy and I play it, we'll give our own thumbs review, I guess.
Yeah, right.
I guess, Ebert's dead, so I guess we can take it. Actually, both of them are dead.
Yeah, right. We got this 100%.
Yeah, we've got their thumbs. Yeah. So are you playing Starfinder? And if you are, what do you think of the game?
Yeah.
And if you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.